Hey, if you're watching, cheers for coming along. So, I've put together just the basic data I guess I would be looking at for predicting my marathon pace. So, I don't have any of the dates or anything, but it's essentially this last 6 to 8 weeks I've completed these sessions, which are all very marathon specific. And I wanted to have at least 10Ks, 6 miles worth of marathon work to figure out what am I capable of. And so the numbers I'm looking at is obviously the average pace. So for a lot of it, the slowest I went was a 3:46 in my very first marathon session. 3:46 minutes per K, which is around a 6 minute mile. Other than that, I didn't go slower than 6 minute mile. And from that, I'm looking, at that initial one, I did 2 times 10K. So, very classic session to check what is realistic, how is my heart rate reacting to the pace power output I would be expecting to hold based off of my data for the marathon. I did this one quite far out, so I guess that would be about 6 weeks out, maybe seven. And the heart rates were quite similar, and that was on purpose. I was keeping them low. One thing I would like to say about max heart rate is you got to take it with a grain of salt because I would be wanting to know, was this just an artifact of, just a bump in heart rate, or is this an actual max heart rate, and that the trend across my interval, my 10 kilometers, was that starting at 150 and finishing at 175, or was the 175 just I pushed a bit hard over a bridge or an overpass or just a little rise, or it's just a random artifact? Regardless, it's good to know. It's good to have that in there. What I'd prefer would be to have like a 30-second max heart rate reading rather than just a single point in time where it was maximal. So the other number we can kind of use there is the decoupling ratio, the power to heart rate ratio. And that shows the first half compared to the second half, what was that relationship between power and heart rate. So let's just say you're doing 100 watts of power and 100 BPM of heart rate, and then the second one you're doing 120 BPM heart rate for that same 100 watts. There's clearly been some point of decoupling there, and you want that to be less than 5%, and the lower the better, because that shows you're that's more in a steady state. So my numbers are good there. What's not so good is that I'm having to slow down because the first 10K was at a 3:38, 5:50 min mile, and I've slowed considerably. My heart rate is higher and my lactate is extremely high for a marathon. I would not want this going over 4 millimole, and it's 5.8. So that gave me an indication like, oh, all right, maybe I'm more over 235, where I thought maybe I was below. Needless to say, kept on with the sessions. So this was just a straight single 10K tempo the week later, 338 minutes per K, 550 minutes per mile. Heart rate 156, amazing. I For some reason, because I had chorus power rather than my stride power, I didn't get a power heart rate reading, but I have a lactate reading and it's 2.5. Anything under 3 for the first half, I would be really happy with. Um, Under 4, like for 10K, I'd want it under 3. And for a half marathon, actually, I'll go on to that because the next week I did the half marathon, same pace, 3:38, a 5:50 minute mile, 161 heart rate, higher. But for me, I should say that that's pretty much the cusp point of my aerobic threshold, my first lactate turn point. So aerobic, not anaerobic threshold. And right at that zone 2 to zone 3 transition. So that's the average. Max, again, I don't know, is that just an artifact or is that actually 169? And I can remember from this that I started drifting towards the top of zone 3 by the end, so I actually slowed down a little bit. And then we have the power to heart rate, which is looking good, 2.7%. Lactate 3.3. Like I just said, like it's under 4. The closer to 3 and under 3 would be ideal, but that's what it is. And so the week after that, I did a progressive run where I did this in miles. So I think it was 5 miles. There was a previous 6 miles before this, but it was 5 miles, 3 miles. No, that's right. I had to have a break after that one. So then there was the 3 miles, and I progressed through. So this one, heart rate was high. I was tired. Um, Powder heart rate, like the decoupling was fine. Like the pace was, yeah, that was fine. Then when I stepped it up, there's a significant increase in how hard that felt. So that was the 338, the 550 pace, but a heart rate of 168, which I've put in blue here, and a powder heart rate ratio close to that 5%. So it's like like as soon as I stepped up from a 340 pace, so pretty much as soon as I went up to like 380 watts in this session, my heart rate started to really, it just kept climbing. And then as a progressive, I stepped it up again to a low 330 pace, so like a 540-minute mile. Heart rate is down because I had a break between these two, because I had some caffeine and it really just didn't sit with me. Um, and you can see that in the powder heart rate, like it just kept going up. So it started quite like a lot lower than it probably should have been because I had a break, whereas I wanted this to be a continuous session, and then it took off. So that's, yeah, low 330s, 540s. Then second to last 10k tempo that I did as part of a combined session. You notice I switched shoes here. This one, so 330, so I went for the fast end just to test it out. So like that 540 min mile, low 330s minutes per k, 165 heart rate. For me, like that's okay. I can average that for a marathon. It's middle of zone 3 for me, but it's it's for 10k, it's too high. Now I was training with someone, so I didn't take a lactate meter. And on the progressive run, I was always planning to build all the way through to the end non-stop, so there's no point taking a lactate reading at the end when you know you're going to be cooked. This one, it just didn't logistically work out. So points to note here are that was too fast. So whenever I'm in the 160s, high 160s, like above 165, especially before halfway, I'm probably in trouble, just knowing from the readings that I've had in my past data. So that's clear. Like low 330s, it's a no-go. Now what's interesting here is that I'd done low 330s before, just the week before, and I was about 10 watts lower. And I noticed that looking more into my shoes, the Metaspeed compared to, so that ASICS Metaspeed Sky Plus compared to the Saucony Endorphin Elite, the Metaspeeds are not as, via the data, efficient for me. So I have a shorter ground contact time, higher vertical oscillation, and generally shorter stride length. So I just am slightly slower in the Metaspeed Skies compared to the Endorphin Elites, which is my chosen race shoe, so that's great. So then the very last 10k tempo that I did, 338, the 550, 157 heart rate, spot on. That's an artifact. I barely went above 160 for that heart rate with that max. Decoupling ratios right around 4%. Now that's a little misleading, that one, because I had a bit of a stop before I started, so my heart rate was really low for the first kind of 10 minutes, I suppose, of that like 36-minute 10k. So I've got that data, right? I've got that. What does that tell me? Well, first I need to know, how reliable is this? Like, how reliable is this as a predictor? So if I scroll down, I put in some half marathon data just as a reference point, where I did a half marathon before this marathon build up, so that would have been about 9 to 10 weeks out. 325, like 5:30 min mile, 325 minutes per K average, like a 112 half. Average heart rate 170, max heart rate, I thought it was higher than that, but 175, 400 watts. So those are the numbers that I 100% have taken from my race. The big session I did before that was I did 2 by 5K, aiming for race pace, which was, the first one and then the second one slightly slower. And pretty much I sat, I averaged right in the middle of that. So 324 and 327 minutes per K, 528 and 533 minutes per mile. Then my heart rate was, they're only 5Ks, they're only 17 minutes, so it's not really going to get all the way up there, but 163 and 169 with the 179 max. And power was low because I put a note there that it was chorus power rather than stride power. But I also took my lactate readings, 5.2, which that is right on the end of sustainable, like steady state-ish. For me, that's definitely something that would be the upper end of my inflection point. And 7.2 is too high, right? So I was like, oh, I might be near a high 320 minutes per K. So, and I knew kind of in wattage I'd be high 390s, so it's 400. So then what I'm kind of going through this for is to show that I can get out of myself, like after tapering, so I had a 2-week taper from this session, I was then able to translate these numbers pretty much into a sustained 1 hour, 12-minute effort, even though it was like a 34-minute kind of effort. So I know that the way I've designed my training and my build up and the fatigue I take into these sessions is reasonably reproducible for a consistent, continuous effort. The other thing that I'd make is that this half marathon at marathon pace had 5 times 1K after it, and I did those all like low 5 minutes mile, like low 3-minute Ks. Then the progressive run had a mile hard, and I did that low 320s, which would be, I guess, a 5:30-minute mile. Then the second to last 10K tempo was followed by 3 2K efforts, so about 7 minutes, or a bit shorter actually, because I was doing those low 320 pace, so that'd be like low 5-minute miles, which showed like I had plenty in reserve after having done my desired marathon pace, got the numbers, got the lactates, and I still had plenty in reserve to step up the intensity, which is a good reference point for me to show, was I near the end or did I have plenty left in my, I guess, anaerobic reserve or just carbohydrate work capacity or energetic reserve. So I do. So it's all a very long-winded way of saying that this would be my goal based off of my data. So my pacing strategy will be for the first 10K, to hit around a 340 minutes per K, so almost just under 6-minute mile, 380 watts, and keeping my heart rate under 160. Then stepping up slightly, sorry, I don't know why these should have, that should be 550 minutes mile, and then that one should be about a 40 odd, say 47. So from that, 10K will be kind of ideally just nice and easy. Then I'll step it up to that 338, 550 minute mile, 165 heart rate. That's low 160s, like I average low 160s for a marathon up to probably high, more like 170 for a marathon multiple times. So I'm confident historically I've been able to do that. I have a power reference reading, which I won't use that much for the Gold Coast Marathon because it's dead flat. If there is any headwind or rise, I will be using, checking that power number to make sure I'm definitely not overdoing it, especially if pace just looks like wildly out of control. It's good to have another reference point. And then so that's through half or 20k. After that 20 to 30k, that's where I'll check heart rate to see, am I speeding up? Am I trying to speed up? Which I think I should be capable of, or am I just holding steady? So that would be a 550. So power, pace, numbers the same, allowing a little more in the heart rate. And then with the final 12, pretty much 12 and a half Ks, will just be go. Go and see, like, by that stage, I'll know I'm 30 Ks deep. I'll know exactly what kind of day I'm having. And so that should give me, I don't know why that was meant to be 42.2. That should give me around a 233. It should, right? Like, obviously, everything's got to go well, and I have to be able to do all of the stuff. But based on all the data that I have, all of my performances over the recent 6, 7, 8 weeks, plus the half, plus all the historical data I have on myself running marathons, this is going to be the best approach. If I'm not having a great day, I'll run 340s, my heart rate will go sky high, and I'll have to slow down. It's as simple as that. I know that if I'm at 170 after, say, 15 Ks, I just got to slow down. It's just not going to be my day. It's not going to happen. So yeah, that's how I do it. Wish me luck. I'll update you next week on how I got on. Gold Coast Marathon, you can download the app and check, follow Will O'Connor if you'd like.